players claim that during the memorial service, that the bird actually, for Warfield, which is held 6 days afterwards in the Terrace Club, the bird actually took flight and circled the bases and flew off into the night, and that wasn't seen again. Now, it wasn't just a couple of players. I mean, you could say that maybe they're being sentimental or something, and wishful that perhaps Warfield was there. But we talked to dozens of players and front office people and ticket takers, and everyone was convinced that was Warfield. So Omar Vizquel was a player who he initially approached and basically said he didn't believe in ghosts. He wasn't superstitious at all. Then when we found out about this story, I went back to him. He said, "Oh yeah, that was Warfield's ghost." And a lot of players, definitely thought he was there. CC Sabathia told us, who was pitching with Cleveland at the time, told us that that the bird, that to this day, every time they see a bird, they think it's him, and they talk about it. He talks about it with, he's talking about it with Jake Westbrook. Now he's with Milwaukee, but I imagine he still feels that way. We had a lot of other ballparks too, covered in the book, of course, and definitely a lot of the older parks, but some of the newer ones too. In Toronto, the Rogers Center, Miguel Batista, who was pitching with the Toronto Blue Jays at the time, thought that was playing a Native American flute underneath the grandstands, and he felt something just swat the flute out of his hand, and it flew 10 feet. And he found out later on that from security guards that the ballpark was built over Native American settlement, and he actually heard from some people that it was built over Native American burial grounds, but we kind of checked into this and didn't find any evidence of that being true. But they did find a lot of fishing wares and other artifacts and pottery when they were building the Rogers Center. So, but Batista was convinced that had something to do with it. Batista actually has a very close relationship with the Native American community and has done a lot of charity work. He has some ball fields named after him in Arizona and on Native American reservations. At U.S. Cellular Field, we had a story from Joe Creedy, who talked about another bird story. We seem to get a lot of bird stories in the book, and maybe it's because of seeing birds on the field is kind of an odd thing, so that could contribute to it. But there's a bird in right field that players believe is Shoeless Joe Jackson, and Joe Creedy is one of the biggest believers, and he talks about it all the time with Herb Winningham. The Tropicana Dome, which is where the Sox are playing tonight, and
leading 4-2.
4-2, okay. There's a curse story from the dome, and that's been talked about among some of the players. Aubrey Huff started it a few years ago, and it was the idea that the ballpark is built over cemeteries, and actually it is built over 3 cemeteries, the Woodlawn, the Evergreen, and the Oaklawn Cemetery. And 2 of those cemeteries are moved, but there's been some talk about the fact that Oaklawn wasn't completely moved, that it was kind of a forgotten old cemetery. And up until this year, there were a lot of curse stories, but we don't know what's going to happen this year. Of course, the Rays dropped Devil from their name, so that could be something too, as Jody had mentioned before. There's Anaheim Stadium has some. There's also talk of a cursed deer, and they certainly feel cursed against the Red Sox. But there was talk of an injury curse for many years, and that was widely believed too among players. And one of the first players to tell us it was Kent Mercker, who had a brain hemorrhage on the mound and collapsed a few years ago, and he said he thought that had to do with the injury curse and the fact that the ballpark was built over Native American burial grounds. And again, we haven't found proof of that, and there's been the team itself has even gone to great lengths to try to dispel that idea. But it's hard to say what Native Americans have inhabited North America for so long. Who's to say what land actually where Native Americans are buried? So. But there are a lot of bizarre injuries over the years, players getting hit with fungal bats, players breaking their legs or arms during spring training. Every tragic injuries, bus crashes, players dying in car crashes, and seemingly at a much higher rate than with other teams. And so it was just commonly thought of that the team had brought in, they brought in a witch one time, Luis Huebner, who gave the team medallions and different things and had them all pray. Even gave it to the owner, Gene Autry. They've had other, people come in and give talismans and good luck things to players to try to break that curse. And in 2002, they actually won, and some thought that the curse was gone, but now there's talk again that it might still be there. So, and then there's Wrigley Field. Now, I'm going to jump ahead. I'm sorry, I'm so far behind with the photos here. Yeah, Wrigley Field is just a beautiful old ballpark, and it's covered with ivy, and like Fenway, it's a national treasure and a lot of tremendous history, and there's been talk there of a curse of a billy goat, and there's kind of an obsession in Chicago, and further this year, in right before this playoff started, they brought in a Greek Orthodox priest to spread holy water over the dugout. That was caught on national television, and it came out that many other people had used holy water with the Cubs. And does happen sometimes in baseball, but he was brought in specifically to break the curse, and then they lost kind of tragically. And on the way out of the dugout in the last game in Dodger Stadium, one of the players punched the pipe, and the dugout got flooded with water. So it was kind of water in reverse there. But we interviewed a lot of players that also talk about ghosts at Wrigley Stadium, and also workers there. And let's talk about the ghost of Harry Carey, the who's a voice of the Cubs for so many years. Talk about the ghost of Charlie Graham, a legendary manager. He'd also played with the Cubs for a long time, and his ashes were sprinkled in left field. And some thought that maybe that he's still around. And security guards, in particular, late night security guards, talk about seeing him sometimes. They claim to hear him talking. They say that the bullpen phone rings sometimes from the dugout when no one's in the dugout. So it's they think it's like Grimm calling for a relief pitcher. But it just kind of they're obsessed with it. And Steve Goodman was a legendary folk singer with the Cubs. He sang the song "Go Cubs Go," and a Cubs fan's dying request, and that song was about having ashes scattered after you die at Wrigley, and a lot of people do that. But his mother actually scattered his ashes in the outfield, and afterwards, a lot of people have claimed to have seen him. Or Ursula Bielski, who's done a lot of great work on paranormal in Chicago, was brought in a crew. The Tribune Company brought her in, and they actually found temperature drops in the outfield and thought maybe that had something to do with it. In addition to, there were many other ballparks that I mentioned, but we also had a lot of stories from hotels. And as John mentioned, the Vinoy Hotel, but there also the Westin St. Francis is a hotel of a tremendous, a lot of players have ghost stories from there. And Coco Crisp gave us a great story, and Ellis Burks too, about a ghost in an elevator there. And CC Sabathia added to it. He thought that a ghost actually got into the elevator and rode down with him a few floors and then got out. He claims that a gust of wind came into the elevator, and then the elevator changed directions, and then when it went up a few floors, the wind went out, and he's taken the stairs in that building ever since. But a lot of guys, change rooms in the middle of the night. A lot of guys are sleepless in those hotels. There's a hotel in Shreveport in the minors that players are absolutely terrified of. Michael Young, he's an all-star second baseman with the Texas Rangers. He and his roommate thought they saw kind of a dark, shadowy figure in the corner of their room, and they were terrified. And they ended up writing messages to the ghost and shaving cream, trying to deal with it and cope, with it over the night. They even put a crucifix on the door with toothpaste, and but they're kind of laughing, but at the same time terrified. Travis Hafner of the Cleveland Indians claimed a ghost shook his bed in the middle of the night. Just a lot of bizarre stories. And we also, of course, as I mentioned, we covered a lot of the curse stories. But we also covered individual curses and heard a lot of stories from players who thought that at some point in their career that somebody had put a curse on them. Jose Lima in the Dominican Republic, when he was with the Houston Astros, he won 20 games in 1999, and the following year he lost 16, including 13 in a row. And he thought that he was cursed, so he went to see a priest down in the Dominican Republic who told him that who just mentioned that a 34-year-old woman had put a curse on him. The priest didn't know anything. He just kind of, sensed that. So he got on national television and he kind of announced, the person who put the curse on me, please come forward. And no one did, but, ultimately, through working with the priest, he says he was able to overcome it, although his career never rebounded, but he claims it's more mechanics now. We heard, and of course, we heard a lot of stories from Fenway Park. One of my favorites is from Carl Bean, the PA announcer for the Red Sox, who claims that Sherm Feller is in the booth with him. Sherm Feller was a legendary PA announcer with the Red Sox for 25 years. And during that time, he just had this deep baritone voice that, they still play before Red Sox broadcast to this day, where he says, "Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Fenway Park." I can't really imitate it, but it's a classic. And but Bean actually, leaves a chair out for Feller sometimes. He talks to him during the game. He knocks on his picture before he goes into the booth. But he also claimed that Feller actually sometimes will, play with the technical equipment, will knock the headsets off the desk and other, bizarre things. We also talked to a lot of security guards at Fenway that talk about hearing the crack of the bat late at night, of hearing other bizarre noises, kind of shrieking noises, cheering noises when no one's in the ballpark. And, it's hard to say what it is, and no one's ever claimed to actually see something. But, working there late at night in the dark, it kind of adds to it. We heard similar stories from a lot of ballparks. We interviewed a lot of security guards who work late at night. At Dodger Stadium especially, they talk about seeing somebody walking across the field late at night, of hearing footsteps, getting tapped on the shoulder, and other strange things. And finally, we had a great story from Bill Spaceman Lee of the Red Sox, who believes that the owner of the Red Sox, he believes in the idea of Hindu reincarnation. So he talked about how the owner of the Red Sox came back and has been kind of stalking him in the form of a bird. Lee was a passionate believer in both in ecology and nature, and became very friendly with Yawkey, who owned a lot of land in South Carolina and worked very hard on it. But Lee always thought that Yawkey would come back as a bird, because Yawkey used to shoot at pigeons from the pitcher's mound along with Ted Williams in the 1940s, and Lee used to say that often. And he claims that on the day that Yawkey passed away, that a pigeon landed right in front of him in the parking lot and wouldn't let him in. He stepped one way and the pigeon stepped that way and then the other, and finally let him through. And since then he's had a lot of sightings of pigeons and birds, and it's just interesting. He's a very colorful character and of course very imaginative, but we interviewed him on 6 different occasions and he always had the exact same details, the same story, and it kind of matches his Hindu beliefs. So it was really interesting to hear. Overall, it was just it was amazing to interview all these players and to kind of get behind the scenes, and just also to hear another side of the game, and which is a really interesting side of the game. Just kind of players, thoughts on the paranormal and their awareness of the history of the game.
Dan, thank you very much. Dan Gordon, ladies and gentlemen. Monster Mash t-shirt and a plaque. Folks, one more thing, and then I just want to give out 3 more awards, and we'll call it a night. This kid, he's been a good friend of mine with the Monster Mash the last 3 years. He did a great thing on Phantom Hitchhikers. I want to give him a Sasquatch t-shirt because when he gets up in the morning, he looks like one. So if Matt, could you come on up here, please? Matt Moniz, ladies and gentlemen. Looks much better than when he got up. Something simian about him. Pennsylvania. Thanks, Matt. All right, man. Next up, this guy, I met him on my very first ghost research this past winter, I guess. I forget when we were doing for Chris Balzano's book, Picture Yourself Ghost Hunting. And I know nothing about ghost hunting, I'll be the first to admit it. And I met this guy, and we did this thing about Haunted Rehoboth with myself, Tom D'Agostino, Matt, and he produced this great video that we showed before the conference tonight called The Ghosts of Foster, Rhode Island. And next year he's going to have us a walk-in video. Mr. Andrew Lake, come on up, Andy. Dover Demon t-shirt from the Dover Demon Historical Society. All right. Thanks, Andy. Take care, man. Thank you very much. Andy Lake. And finally, if you could grab the camera, brother, Steve, come on up here. Steve Russo, a long time. We've produced probably, I don't know, 300 shows together. Steve, at least, right? 300 television shows. We both have issues with OCDs, but he comes every year to direct this show, and he moved away. He's expecting a baby, his first kid. So Steve Russo, ladies and gentlemen. Great. And finally, just to plug in me, I stopped lecturing about the paranormal years ago, but I do offer lectures, just a few. It's called Phantoms, and they're Bay State Phantoms, and I'm making 3 appearances. I only lecture on historical weather now, but Sunday, October 26th, Cohasset Historical Society. The next Monday at Boston Public Library, Charlestown, and then Wednesday at Framingham Public Library, my lecture called Phantom. So you've been a great audience. Thanks for hanging in there. We'll hope to see you next year, October 17, 2009. Good night from the Mass Monster Mash. Take care.